Today I would like to discuss the topic about 3D human modeling from image and test guidance as introduced by Dr. Zui. And overall, we will cover three parts. Firstly, the 3D human reconstruction and the 3D avatar generation and the integration of reconstruction and generation. So firstly, about the 3D human reconstruction, we will subsequently discuss the overview of the background and our two recent works, JIFF, jointly aligned implicit phase function, and SeSDF, self-evolved and distance field. Regarding the 3D human reconstruction, we will always want to produce a 3D geometry model with intricate details on a 2D image input. The 3D reconstructed geometry has the potential to be applied in various fields, including the 3D hardwares like AR goggles and 3D tile present systems. To construct such 3D human geometries, traditional methods rely on a multi-view stereo method setup that utilize both silhouette and photometric information. Moreover, these methods often require a significant number of views and careful thermal calibration, which can prevent the practical application in the real world. So after the traditional method, parametric statistical methods are then developed. For example, Simple and Simple X can estimate human shape and pose parameters based on different information, for example, silhouette, shading, 2D joint locations, body part segmentations, etc. However, this method may not be able to recover certain clothing topologies such as clothes and health. To build clothing topologies, voxel-based methods were proposed to predict per point occupancy of a voxel grid. Unfortunately, these methods often require high GPU memories and infer or train a single model. As a result, engineers can only build low-resolution methods during the application. More recently, implicit function-based methods are proposed to predict the per point probability of lying inside or outside of the reconstructed 3D human body, so-called occupancy value. These methods have shown promising results in reconstructing clothing and hair with high-resolution texture details from single or few images. One of the most promising methods is PyFu, which stands for the pixel line implicit function. During training, PyFu proposed to project the 3D sample points to the 2D image space and use bilinear interpolation to obtain pixel line image features. These features, along with the Z depth value, will be input to an MLP to predict the occupancy value or RGB color value. With these predicted values, textured 3D human models can be obtained using marching cubes during the inference stage. So following PyFu, several methods have been proposed to enhance the performance, such as PyFHD, GeoPyFu, AquaPath, and Pamir. However, these methods still lack the fine face details in their reconstructed bodies. So to handle this problem and enhance the facial details in the reconstructed human bodies, we propose jointly aligned implicit phase function for high-quality single-view closed human reconstruction, which has been accepted by CVPR 2022 with an oral presentation. The objectives of our JIFF project are twofold. Firstly, we want to improve the geometry of the reconstructed face from PyFu. And secondly, we want to improve the texture of the model face. To achieve these objectives, our proposed approach involves leveraging a 3D morphable model, 3DMM, to enforce some 3D face pairs. 3DMM models a face as a linear combination of the PCA basis vectors, which can be expressed as if equations, where alpha, beta, and delta represent the identity, expression, and texture parameters. In our method, we estimate the parameter and construct the both geometry and texture of 3DMM from cropped and resized images. So while 3DMM produces some face mesh with detailed geometry and texture, it can be challenging to integrate it with a PyFu-based mesh. In these slides, we present both PyFu-based mesh and 3DMM mesh, as you can see from this slide. And due to the misalignment and different geometry, it's non-trivial to merge these two meshes in a satisfactory manner. So rather than directly merging them in the 3D space, we propose to fuse the information in the feature space. leveraging the space-aligned 3D features and 2D pixel-aligned features from the 3D and the images respectively to predict the face occupancy. So given an input image, we first use a stack hourglass image encoder to extract a feature map, followed by the bilinear interpolation to obtain pixel-aligned 2D features. We then detect and crop the face region and from the input image and estimate 3D model. The resulting 3D will be input to point-net and 3D unit to extract local and global informations, and space-aligned 3D features are then obtained via trilinear interpolation. Finally, we fuse this feature together and use an MLP to predict the occupancy value. Next, I will introduce our close-to-fine network for improving the textures. So we first fuse the 2D features from both geometry branch and texture branch and feed an MLP to predict the local resolution textures. To predict the high resolution textures, we begin by extracting the 3D feature volume from texture 3D. At the same time, we upsample the input image to 1024 by 1024 to extract a high resolution feature map. We then fuse these features together to predict the high resolution textures. And in this slide, we show some comparisons with Full HD, Arc Plus, and the ground truth. We can observe that our methods in both dimensions of the texture and geometry has higher quality and is closest to the ground truth. And here are some quantitative numbers on the head and the face region. So beyond JIFF, next we move forward and conduct research for improving 3D human reconstruction from uncalibrated single or multiple images and propose self-evolved scientific field, SeSDF. While current method we have said that they lack facial details, we have also observed that they struggle with complex poses. As you can see from this comparison, although ICON was proposed to improve the robustness of the network, it faced challenges in reconstructing fine facial details without introducing artifacts. Besides the single-view human reconstruction, multi-view scenario are another commonly discussed area. Intuitively, multi-view images provide more sufficient features, enabling us to reconstruct 3D human models with greater accuracy and robustness. Currently, Full HD, and Brio can support multi-view setting. However, they trade the features from different views equally by using the average pooling, which may not be the most efficient or meaningful feature fusion strategy. So to handle this problem, we propose SeSDF, which has been accepted by CVPL 2023. With SeSDF, our objectives can be broadly divided into two parts. Firstly, we aim to enhance the geometry of the 3D human reconstruction from single image. Secondly, we want to develop a more effective and meaningful feature fusion strategy for multi-view scenarios. One common method to improve human reconstruction is the usage of parametric model, i.e. SimpleX. Typically, SimpleX model a 3D human based on the pose parameter theta, shape parameter beta, and the facial parameter phi by using the linear blend skinning. However, SimpleX can only contain minimal closes, which will provide features that are contradictive with the images, making it a non-trivial problem to combine or integrate these two features together. So therefore, our core idea is to evolve the 3D human geometry based on SimpleX for more closing details. Specifically, we propose an SeSDF module to evolve the SimpleX-based signed distance field by incorporating the 2D pixel-aligned features and 3D space-aligned features, and get the evolved signed distance field which contain more closing details, which is also consistent with the input image, which is the 2D image features. Now we are integrating our self-evolved signed distance field into the 3D human reconstruction pipeline. First is the single view scenario. Given the single view image as input, we first feed a SimpleX model and then extract the 2D pixel-aligned features and 3D space-aligned features from image and the SimpleX model respectively. By concatenating these features and evolve the sign distance field and inputting them together into an MLP, we can predict the occupancy value and extract the 3D human geometry. About the multi-view scenario, suppose that we have n view image as input. Our method first fits and optimize the simple X model via the projection to multiple images. Same as a single view pipeline, we can obtain the features from every single views. And more importantly, instead of using the average pooling, to fuse this feature equally, we propose a cushion-well feature fusion strategy. This approach involves shooting a ray from the camera to a 3D point X and calculating a coefficient Wix as a reciprocal of the distance between the depth value of 3D point X and the first intersection point between simple X and along the ray. This coefficient will then be used to weight features from different views, and finally, an MLP will be used to predict the occupancy value for more details. So now here is some qualitative comparisons on the real-world single-view images and with several SOTA methods. Our observation can indicate that our method is more effective in handling complex poses than the PyFu, PyFHD, ArcPath, and Pamir, and we can obtain more closing details and much less artifacts than icon. We have also conducted qualitative comparisons on synthetic data with simple standing pose, and our method can perform better and closest to the ground truth. We have also conducted quantitative comparisons under the uncalibrated multi-view scenarios, and the results presented in these slides can indicate that our method outperforms the other methods from different angles. Our method is flexible. It can be trained and tested with any number of views, and the number of views used in training and testing doesn't need to be the same. These are the qualitative evaluations, and here are some quantitative evaluations under the setting of both single view and uncalibrated multi-views. So that's all about the 3D human reconstruction. We are moving on to the topic of 3D avatar generation and talk about the background and toolworks, DreamAvatar, and HeadSculpt. So firstly about the background for text-to 3D generation. Building on the success of text-to image diffusion model, DreamFusion proposed to apply a pre-trained text-to image diffusion model such as ImageN to optimize the 3D model like NeRF, so that the rendering of this 3D model is aligned or look like to the text prompt. However, this still is challenging, is that we only have access to the text-to-image diffusion model, which is pre-trained, and we don't have the dataset to train this model. Consequently, we cannot update the diffusion model like the ancestral sampling used in their training. To address this challenge, DreamFusion propose a new novel strategy called isolation sampling (SDS). In the original diffusion setup, they train a text-to-image diffusion model based on this specific objective and backpropagate the gradients with two Jacobian term over the unit. However, in our case, where we only have the access to the pre-trained diffusion model, it turns out that we can optimize a randomly initialized 3D model by removing the unit Jacobian. And we can then derive the Scott isolation sampling for the backpropagation and self-optimization of the text-to 3D methods. The overall pipeline of DreamFusion can be then summarized as follows. Firstly, they render the RGB images by integrating the normal from the density grid and lighting information and the predicted albedo values. The render images will be added with some random Gaussian noise and input to the pre-trained diffusion model together with the input test. The Then the randomly initialized nerve will be optimized to be aligned with the test prompt based on the difference between the ambient noise and the predicted noise, which means the distance between the nerve and the test prompt. So after the big success of Dream Fusion, there are many papers trying to improve it for the text to 3D generation task. The most famous like Magic 3D and Latent Nerve. However, considering the complexity of the human bodies, they still fail for the human-related 3D generation task. Then, to enable more robust 3D human reconstruction, 3D human generation, we first discuss the DreamAvatar. Text and shape-guided 3D human avatar generation via diffusion model for generating controllable 3D human avatars. Our objectives for DreamAvatar can be broken down into three parts. Firstly, building upon the Dream Fusion, we aim to enhance the network for 3D generation related to the humans. And secondly, we aim to enable the network to generate 3D human avatars with controllable shapes and poses. And last, we want to have the network has the ability to dream the geometry that is consistent with the test, instead of constrained to some certain priors. And to achieve these objectives, we apply simple model as our 3D priors. In this slide, I will go through the pipeline of DreamAvatar and discuss our mindset when we were building the network. Firstly, we have the simple parameters which will define the pose and shape parameters that we want, and we want in the final generated avatars. Then we can construct a pose space based on these parameters. Following Dream Fusion, one straightforward manner would be using the nerve to render the images and have the text encoder to calculate the loss. And we can also zoom in to the 3D head region and enhance the performance of the head and calculate the loss for the head region. However, the diffusion model works on the image dimension, leading to problems like self-occlusion. For the complex poses, we would therefore need an image like in here with standard pose and without any self-occlusion for supervision. To this end, we construct another canonical space with canonical shape and canonical pose. Similarly, it will go through the shelled nerve module and diffusion model for its supervision of this single branch. Now the problem becomes how to build connections between these two spaces. We hereby build a deformation field, which consists of articulate deformation and non-rigid motion to transfer points in the pose space to the canonical space. We now build their connection, and the network can be optimized iteratively until reaching the final result. We can distill the well-learned high-quality texture and geometry from the canonical space to the pose space. We can also use the deformation to further more robustly control the generation of the canonical space. However, to further ensure the robust control of the shape and pose in the ultimate generation, we propose a simple base density field. So instead of the sketch shape loss in the later nerve, we propose a simple base density field, which involves converting each point sign distance value to a density value, whether it's in the pose space or the canonical space. Our final density field will afterward be derived from the simple base density field. And that's all for this pipeline of the DreamAvatar. Here are some results firstly under the canonical space from various test prompts. We can also control the pose of the generation, including different of the complex poses. And we can by changing the simple parameters, shape parameters, we can control the shape of the final generation for example, thin, tall, fat. We can also generate the result based on the instruction, like Joker wearing different color of suits. Our methods can derive the body and full body region and the head region, can integrate the attributes respectively from the head and body region, resulting with X characteristic in the generation. And after DreamAvatar, we also explored the method HeadSculpt for editing 3D generated avatar based on the instructive prompt. In HeadSculpt, we want to address two problems. The first one is multi-phase generous problem. Considering the 2D pre-trained diffusion model lack the 3D prior of the head, particularly regarding the render viewpoint, it will also always lead to the multi-phase in the generated result because they will mix different viewpoint and cannot figure out which viewpoint is the front view. The other one is fine-grained editing. Although Instruct Pixel Pix can edit 2D images based on some instructive prompts, they can barely maintain the original identity or result with good-looking images. So by then, no 3D methods have been explored to achieve the editing task in the 3D space. Therefore, we have proposed a new method called HeadSculpt, crafting 3D head avatars with text. Our objective is to achieve highly detailed 3D generation and fine-grained editing results based on both descriptive and instructive prompts. To achieve this task, we propose a close-to-fine network while employing the nerve in the closed stage and the DMTAT in the fine stage. Specifically, to handle the mentioned problem, we first propose a prior-driven skull distillation PSD for multi-phase generous problem, and also identity-aware editing skull distillation for efficiently editing the 3D results while preserving the original identity. Firstly, about the prior-driven skull distillation, we apply and project the flame key point onto the image plane from a certain angle and input it to a landmark-based control net to calculate the skull distillation and loss for the backpropagation. However, we have observed that the model still struggle with differentiating or handling the back view from the front view based on the landmark control. So to address this issue, we have applied texture inversion technique to learn a texture embedding for the back view. Specifically, the texture inversion is optimized via these images and the result with a learned texture embedding to replace the words back view during the training. Then by using the back view texture inversion, we can already notice the improvement presented in the 2D image generation as seen in these examples. Beyond PSD, for the editing task, we have proposed an identity-aware editing skull distillation that efficiently mix the gradients from the both descriptive and instructive prompts. We predefine a hyperparameter W to balance the weight from the descriptive direction and the instructive direction. As we can observe, the predefined parameter can effectively control the level of editing from the reference avatar. These are some qualitative results for 3D head avatar generation. We can generate high quality textures and geometries. And we can also edit the generated 3D head avatars while preserving their very original identity. Then we have talked about the 3D human reconstruction and 3D avatar generation. One next step will be, can we integrate the metrics from this reconstruction method and generation methods to leverage their advantages and get rid of their disadvantages. So let's recall. Up till now, we have discussed the topic of 3D human reconstruction. Normally, 3D human reconstruction require hard to obtain the 3D dataset and struggle with the human subjects that are outside the training data, but this will highly constrain the real application in the movies or gamings. On the other hand, 3D avatar generation doesn't require the training data, but suffer from the training efficiency and their performance for both geometry and texture. So then one question will pop out, can we integrate the 3D human reconstruction and 3D generation? To this end, we come to our work, Get 3D, create 3D avatars from text and image guidance. Let's first talk about our motivation. Suppose that we can initialize our 3D presentation from simple and the parametric 3D human models. We can render it to various views. Let's take 6 views as an example. Then we can detect the open pose skeleton for these renderings. With a big success of text-to-image, text-to-2D image generation methods, we find it that with ControlNet and texture inversion, we can generate 6 view images based on one descriptive prompt. Then our question will become, can we create a 3D human model based on these images? Firstly, we will ask ourselves one question. Can we directly use the 3D human reconstruction pipeline? Because back to our previous discussion, the 3D human reconstruction can support multi-view scenario. But our answer here is no. For the reasons, firstly, the 3D human reconstruction pipeline PyFu is constrained by the training dataset, but we don't have such datasets like in the movie or gaming characters for the training. And secondly, the inconsistency exists in the generated images in terms of body pose, textures, and their orientation with the original orientations in the simple rendering. So that's the reason why we cannot use the human reconstruction pipeline directly, but we can actually seek help from it. For example, we can use the features. So in this slide, I will roughly go through the pipeline of Get3D after talking about our motivations. Similarly, given the multi-view generated image, we can optimize the DMTet with this straightforward pipeline. However, using a single pipeline with sparse view can often lead to overfitting and suboptimal results. To address these issues, we construct another pipeline with DMTet. Through this pipeline, we utilize the construction prior the pixel lines to the image features. Specifically, we input these generated images into the stack hourglass image encoder and obtain the pixel line image feature via bilinear interpolation. And then considering the inconsistency observed in the generated images, we propose the similarity of warehouse feature fusion strategy to better define and incorporate the consistent image features from different views. Unfortunately, the inconsistency within the generated images will also lead to weaknesses in the consistent pattern. For example, we want to move an inconsistent pose or texture to a consistent pose and texture among 6 views. We will need to fill up some weaknesses. So to this end, we apply the diffusion model to denoise the rendering from the upper branch and apply the HED supervision at the same time. These two grids, upper and lower branch, will be optimized jointly by novel view supervision, distilling the features from the high reconstruction prior to the upper branch and the imagination learned we can see from the upper branch to the lower branch. In the end, we notice that the rendering from low resolution grid and high resolution grid are almost the same. Therefore, we use the high resolution grid for the upper branch as our final result and the lower branch for the lower resolution grid as our supervision grid for better training efficiency. And here are some qualitative results created from Get3D with better and high resolution textures. And it only takes around 15 minutes for training for each one subject. And I think that's all for my today's sharing. Thank you very much for listening.